Gojo Satoru vs Ryomon Sukuna, the greatest battle in Jujutsu Kaisen and one of the coldest fights in Shonen Jump. My brothers and sisters, this is a death-defying battle that really shows us what it means to be the strongest in the coolest possible way. And today I am very excited to fully break down and explain this battle in all of its entirety. 13 chapters of peak, non-stop action and an incredible journey paving the way for who is the strongest in the story. Without any delay, let's break down this magnificent fight. This legendary battle starts from the events after Gojo's release from the prison realm. It's been a little over a month since Gojo's freedom, and both fighters decide to fight in the uninhabited, demon-infested city of Shinjuku. The town is wrought in destruction as the horrors of Shibuya still haunted in Gojo's absence. But today, on December 24th, 2018, Gojo is finally here. As he walks with Ichiji through the city to the Shinjuku observation tower, Gojo is now glad that the civilian victims from his unlimited void have recovered, and now that the city is more like a ghost town, Gojo can truly go all out in this fight. It is now time. Gojo releases a huge amount of cursed energy, letting his presence known to Sukuna, who is waiting over 4 kilometers across the city. There is no time or place for this battle to start, but both opponents can just feel that this fight is drawing nigh, as the one to strike first will determine which of these two men is the challenger. Gojo is the first to make his move, deciding to receive assistance from Gakuganji, Utahime, and Ichiji in order to launch a decisive attack on Sukuna. Utahime uses her curse technique Solo Forbidden Zone to perform a ritual that temporarily amplifies the cursed energy amount and output of a sorcerer and herself within her zone. It's said to master Jujutsu is to master subtraction. However, Utahime leaves nothing out. She uses incantations, hand signs, dances, and instruments along with Gakuganji's curse technique in order to raise the output of her curse technique beyond 120%. Thanks to Utahime, Gojo channels his energy by reciting his own incantations, ultimately resulting in a 200% hollow purple that tears through the city straight to Sukuna. Ichiji set a barrier in place to hide Gojo's attack, and Sukuna did not notice the curse technique output till the very last moment. Somehow Sukuna was able to actually tank this hollow purple, and he was left missing his right arm, as Gojo proclaims that the one and only king of curses is the challenger of this fight. Sukuna scoffs at the idea that this brat of the modern era says that he is the challenger. Gojo Satoru is nothing more than a fish upon his chopping board. A bit fresher than others, but still just a nameless fish. And the first order of business is to peel off those scales, which, if you dwell on this fight, Sukuna could have used this metaphor for how he wants to rid Gojo of his neutral infinity curse technique, and that would be his first hurdle in the fight. In response, Gojo says that he will not hold back, even if it's Megami's body. And since Sukuna has already escaped death twice, Gojo feels that he's free to worry about Megami after he kills him. And just like that, the greatest sorcerer battle in history has begun. Sukuna is the first to engage as he tries to kick Gojo, and Gojo naturally repels him with infinity, and both fighters face off with their cursed energy swelling. Immediately, Gojo shows off his prowess with his curse technique as he dodges Sukuna, drops to the floor, and uses both the simultaneous application of blue and red in order to flick Sukuna away like he's telekinetic. Sukuna is very impressed at Gojo's application of his curse technique and instantly forced on the defensive as he keeps moving around to avoid getting hit by Gojo and all of the flying debris. When Sukuna breaks away, suddenly Gojo is surprised because Sukuna used his dismantle ability to slash the building behind him, and Gojo is just left shocked at what that slash was and what it was meant for. Sukuna used that time to get in close and apply domain amplification. By then, the fallen building halts in place, suspended in the air above them, and Gojo decides to deactivate Infinity, crashing both of them inside the building as it's falling. So as it hurls toward the ground, they both fly through a hallway, and Gojo uses a door as a divider to block their vision, to which the both of them charge up their fists with cursed energy. The building crashes down, and the both of them emerge from the rubble, ready for round 2. This was the opener for the most high-level Jujutsu fight in the series, but nothing could have prepared us for what happened next. Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 225 is the start of one of the greatest domain battles of all time. And even at the start of the chapter, our cast of Jujutsu sorcerers realized just the technicality of their battles so far. Sukuna has used domain amplification in order to bypass the limitless, so as a result, amplification itself envelops the user in an empty barrier without a curse technique. The trade-off is being able to neutralize an opponent's curse technique by pouring into that open space. The characters then discuss the topics of domain expansions themselves. A domain would also effectively bypass Gojo's infinity. However, after a domain, the user's curse technique is also burnt out, so there's a measure of risk involved. Chozo mentioned Sukuna has an open barrier domain, meaning that it does not close like normal barriers. This is something impossible because it's like painting a picture without a canvas, holding water without a container, or using software without first the hardware. He also mentions how Yuki was barely able to hold off Kenjaku's domain with a simple domain and ultimately failed because Kenjaku used an open barrier domain expansion. However, if an open domain were to clash with a closed domain, it would be more like a clash between the barrier's outer shells. One barrier shell versus the opponent's open domain. It likely would have been a battle between the short hit effects and how long the closed domain can last, depending on which opponent has the domain's exterior. In chapter 15, Gojo mentioned how a more refined or polished domain will reign supreme in a domain expansion clash. It can also come down to cursed energy and compatibility. In terms of cursed energy, Gojo has mastered the 6 eyes and thus has no limit to his cursed energy, and Sukuna possesses twice as much cursed energy as Yuta Okotsu, and his cursed energy efficiency is godlike, only second to Gojo in terms of efficiency. So cursed energy is not going to be a limiting factor in this domain battle. However, what about compatibility? Just then, everyone focuses on their screens. Here it comes, the greatest, most ultimate display of curse technique prowess performed by the strongest sorcerers in Jujutsu Kaisen. Evenly matched. The Honored One Gojo and the King of Curses Sukuna were evenly matched within Gojo's domain barrier. The two sure hit attacks overlap and cancel each other out in a battle between both sides expanding their domains. If either one were to sustain heavy damage or the domain collapses, the opponent's sure hit technique will immediately strike. Evenly matched. Within the barrier, they are evenly matched. The effective range of Sukuna's open domain reaches beyond the barrier of Gojo's domain, and ultimately, the barrier of a domain is weak against attacks from the outside. Gojo's domain shell cracks and shatters open, leaving only Malevolent Shrine as the winner of this domain battle. This, however, left Gojo defenseless, and Gojo is cut with Sukuna's blade, finally able to reach the unbreakable Satoru Gojo. At last, Sukuna has effectively hit Gojo, and now he is faced with the relentless might of Malevolent Shrine. But just as his survival seemed grim, Gojo was able to use reverse curse technique and instantly heal from the cut. Yet even now, Gojo still suffers from curse technique burnout after domains, and he cannot use limitless, he cannot leave, and he is left with little to no options. However, in the face of such odds, his body is serrated and viciously slashed by Sukuna, yet Gojo cannot help but to smile because he can deal with this. Gojo is glad that this is all Sukuna has, because when it comes down to it, Gojo's curse technique is far superior. Crazy enough, Gojo can move while sustaining this much damage, and he continuously uses reverse curse technique at max output in order to survive. Even now, Gojo can still fight Sukuna under these conditions. Gojo perceives the heart of Malevolent Shrine is actually the shrine itself and not Sukuna. The shrine serves no purpose in destroying, so Gojo will have to deal with Sukuna directly. With limited options, Gojo uses New Shadow Style's Simple Domain in order to give himself more time to heal by negating the short hit while also using Reverse Curse technique to heal himself. However, a Simple Domain is only a temporary solution to an open barrier like we saw with Yuki versus Kenjaku. Yet Gojo here is able to tank the slashes from Sukuna and continue to use Simple Domain a second time. And in this second instance, Gojo doesn't even heal his body, but he's using Reverse Curse technique for something else. Just when the Simple Domain breaks again and Gojo is covered with slashes, everyone wonders to themselves, is Gojo Satoru about to lose? Yet just in time, Gojo gets a burst of speed, grappling Sukuna, then Gojo fires a point-blank reversal red, launching Sukuna back, meaning that his curse technique has returned, and he was able to use Reverse Curse technique to replenish his own Limitless technique. Finally, Gojo was able to regain some ground in this battle as he's easily able to escape the effective range of Sukuna's shrine, yet he provokes Sukuna into extending his domain's range to the maximum, as Gojo also expands his own domain once more. This is now the second domain expansion clash. However, this time things are different. Gojo switched the internal and external conditions of his domain, so now the barrier shell is strong on the outside and weaker on the inside. They both now continue to scuffle inside the domain as both curse techniques have cancelled each other out and they engage in fierce hand-to-hand combat. Naturally, Sukuna still has to contend with Infinity when Gojo retains his own technique. So he surprised Gojo by also using domain amplification while simultaneously maintaining Malevolent Shrine. What's more is that his output is increasing and starting to have an impact through Gojo's Infinity. So Gojo decides to disregard Sukuna's amplification altogether and swing in hard and heavy, eventually landing a clean hit on Sukuna's side. What Gojo did not expect was how Sukuna used contact with Gojo to his advantage as he cleverly maneuvers himself back to back with Satoru, keeping close contact with him. Sukuna deliberately shut off his own short hit effect, and he managed to further increase the power of his binding vow beyond the limits that were shown in Shibuya. He increased the power of his slashes outside Gojo's domain shell by completely shutting off the short hit on the inside of the domain, meaning the only way for Sukuna to remain safe was for him to touch Gojo, because inside the Unlimited Void, the only ones not affected are Gojo and anyone Gojo touches. So as a result of these events, Gojo's domain has collapsed once more, leaving him vulnerable to Malevolent Shrine slashes. This time around though, during Gojo's curse technique burnout stage, he actually decides to use an ability called Falling Blossom Emotion to mitigate the damage from Sukuna's slashes. This is a secret esoteric art taught by the big three sorcerer clans as an anti-domain countermeasure, wherein the user uses cursed energy to strike anything it touches, including simple short hit attacks like Sukuna slashes or things like Dagon's fish. However, Kusakabe brought out that it's useless against complex domains like Unlimited Void or maybe techniques like Mahito's self-embodiment of perfection. Nonetheless, Falling Blossom Emotion cannot withstand the output of Malevolent Shrine. However, it gives Gojo just enough time to heal his curse technique, and for a third time, Gojo goes for an all or nothing domain expansion. This time, however, he increases the range of Unlimited Void dramatically, but as this unique barrier begins to crack, engulfing the range of Malevolent Shrine, the domain then starts to condense and get smaller, further and further, until the barrier sphere is around the size of a basketball. This unique size has the added benefit of becoming more dense and having a stronger shell. Thanks to Gojo's time dwelling within the prison realm, he was able to change the conditions of his domain and shrink the size down to such an extreme degree. Of course, a domain's parameters are far different on the inside than they are on the outside. The domain was far more stronger and was finally able to hold out against Malevolent Shrine. Eventually, during this third clash, Sukuna also switched his domain's conditions and shrunk his effective range in order to further empower the output of his curse technique. The condensed domain ultimately ends up breaking again, and everyone continues to lose hope in Gojo's ability to actually win a domain clash as he is quickly running out of options. But just then, simultaneously, when Gojo's domain collapses, Sukuna's malevolent shrine also broke down, and after 3 minutes, Sukuna destroyed Gojo's domain from the outside, and Gojo damaged Sukuna so badly that he cannot maintain malevolent shrine itself. Immediately after the third exchange, Gojo and Sukuna now have to focus on restoring their curse techniques, and Gojo takes the initiative to chase Sukuna down as his limitless quickly replenished. This led to a brief battle between them where Gojo was constantly pressuring and forcing Sukuna back. However, something is wrong. This whole time, Sukuna hasn't been using any other curse technique besides the one granted in his domain. No 10 Shadows, no Fire Arrow, no Mahoraga. Even when Gojo switched the domain so that it was weak on the inside, Sukuna still chose the risky approach. This gave Gojo a huge advantage. Sukuna's amplification is his only means of attack, and if the curse techniques are cancelled out, Sukuna won't be able to slash Gojo or even use buildings to attack like he did before. Sukuna should know that Gojo is well aware of Mahoraga, so Gojo might have surmised that maybe Sukuna's worried Mahoraga might get one shot. But despite Gojo's theories running through his mind, through the shadows, Sukuna actually has the Dharma Chakra wheel spinning, and Gojo himself has a nosebleed and begins to show signs of heavy fatigue. Quickly, Gojo ignores it and wipes it away, starting the fourth domain expansion battle. The condition for Gojo winning the domains has shifted. Gojo will win or stalemate with Sukuna when he damages him enough in those 3 minutes that it takes for Sukuna to break the barrier. Meaning if Malevolent Shrine breaks within these 3 minutes, Gojo Satoru will win. Inside the domain, Gojo kicked it up a notch. He overwhelms Sukuna with furies of punches and easily yanks him around with Limitless. Sukuna was just able to keep up with Gojo, enough so that they simultaneously destroyed the domains again. This gave Gojo a better chance in this fight because when it came to fighting inside the domain expansions, Gojo was stronger. He launches Sukuna back, and finally both opponents deploy the 5th and final domain expansion in this fight. Yet when they expanded their domains, Gojo's curse technique activation was just an instant faster. Meanwhile, Sukuna was busy repairing his body with reverse curse technique before replenishing his own technique. The difference was less than 0.01 seconds. However, Unlimited Void landed. Then 2 minutes and 40 seconds after their final domain clash, Malevolent Shrine has collapsed, leaving only Unlimited Void as the winner of the 5th and final domain battle. Now Gojo has trapped Sukuna within his world of Limitless, and he won't hold back. He needs to crush Sukuna's heart, crush his lungs, crush his liver, in order to bring Sukuna closer to death than he's ever been. However, the 8-handled sword, Divergent Scylla, Divine General Mahoraga, emerges. Gojo panics. He wasn't expecting Mahoraga so close to victory, yet he tries to destroy it in one shot, preparing a reversal red technique. Makura instantly pierces the domain's interior, shattering Gojo's domain and showcasing it actually managed to adapt to Unlimited Void. Everyone is now able to view the crown jewel of the Zenin clan, Makura, a Shikigami that can adapt to any and all phenomena, now under the command of Sukuna. Sukuna already showcased that he was able to take on the burden of Mahoraga's adaptation by using the wheel for himself in Yorozu's battle. But here he did something a little different, since he kept it hidden in the shadow. Throughout a total of 5 domain expansion battles, the sure hits canceled out 5 times. Gojo's sure hit targets everything in the domain, however Sukuna's sure hit targets everything except Sukuna himself. So Sukuna was left unprotected and was actually able to get hit by Unlimited Void those 5 times. Yet it was not Sukuna taking on that burden. The one who took the damage from Unlimited Void to process the adaptation was Megumi Fushiguro's soul. Sukuna was able to use Megami to let Mahoraga adapt without incurring the risks of Unlimited Void himself. So Sukuna's first key objective in this fight was to strip Gojo of his own domain expansion. Even though Megami's soul wasn't yet done adapting to Gojo's Unlimited Void, Gojo is now unable to open his own domain expansion anymore. A sorcerer's curse technique is stored roughly around the right prefrontal cortex, and Gojo is essentially using cursed energy to damage his brain, then using reverse curse technique to repair the already burnt out curse technique. This maneuver is extremely risky for both Gojo and Sukuna because healing the brain / curse technique is a totally different matter than healing flesh and bone. Gojo has reached a limit making it impossible to perform domain expansion without dying, and now Gojo is in an extreme state of exhaustion. Sukuna only repaired his curse technique and his brain 3 times out of the 5 domain expansion battles, so he had a bit more leeway than Gojo. Sukuna arrogantly belittles Satoru as he uses the Dharma Chakra wheel on himself, and he's about to close his barrier from Malevolent Shrine in order to adapt to the Limitless and kill Gojo throughout the process. In the end, Gojo did not meet Sukuna's standards as a sorcerer, and he was only the strongest of this era because Sukuna did not exist in this era. Sukuna taunts him as being painfully ordinary. Yet as he tries to open his own domain, it malfunctions. Shrine collapses and Sukuna profusely bleeds from his face. It hadn't even been 10 seconds since Sukuna took a hit from Unlimited Void. However, just like Gojo, Sukuna's brain took enough damage, making domain expansion impossible. Sure enough, Gojo makes it clear that he's not going anywhere yet. His students are watching, so he's gonna keep showing off. The battle now enters the real round 2 as Gojo amplifies blue and warps Sukuna right into his fist. A punch from Gojo is especially brutal, as Yuta and Hikari speak from experience. A fist enhanced with cursed energy also uses blue to absorb the surrounding space. Blow for blow, Gojo has become a sorcerer far beyond anyone's level. Every hit is critical, every move he makes has a purpose, and he is the strongest of today. Gojo now manhandles Sukuna with overwhelming ferocity, amplifying blue to crush him with rubble and finding new and creative ways to use Limitless to try and catch Sukuna off guard, even managing to become so fast that Gojo uses after images in an attempt to trip Sukuna up. However, Sukuna was able to keep up and managed to fend Gojo off. This also prompts the Dharma Chakra wheel to spin once more, since Sukuna is now the user taking on the burden of the adaptation. Both fighters are now wary of each other's abilities. Sukuna actually pauses the adaptation when he has to use domain amplification in order to touch Gojo, causing the wheel to turn black. On the other hand, Gojo only uses his lapse blue in order to avoid the adaptation. Gojo points out that Sukuna needs 4 spins in total to adapt Mahoraga to infinity, so this has now become a countdown of fate as only 3 spins are left till the adaptation is complete. As Gojo continued to fight Sukuna, whether he attacked him or not, the wheel continues to spin regardless, as it hits its second and its third turn. When the wheel takes an attack, it will adapt over the course of time, then it will spin, and once it takes multiple attacks, it will adapt quicker and quicker, gaining more spins. So far, since the domains have ended, Gojo continued to use aspects of curse technique Lapse Blue, but now he will try to catch Sukuna with a hidden reversal red, which is more powerful. Yet just as the technique landed, Sukuna used amplification to minimize the damage. Confident that Gojo is beginning to lose his edge, Sukuna once again taunts Gojo for his sloppy strategy. However, Gojo is not done yet. The red he just fired still has not exploded, and the reversal red made a full loop around the building and struck Sukuna from behind. No, Gojo is still not done. While Sukuna is stun locked, he takes full advantage of his opportunity, hitting Sukuna with a decisive black flash, shocking everyone watching. This attack knocked Sukuna out briefly, and it also caused the Dharma Chakra to fall. Given how hard Gojo hits on his own, it's no surprise a black flash would even leave Sukuna comatose. Yet even after all that, the wheel still spins. A shadow emerges, stumbling Gojo, then Mahoraga sprawls out, fully adapted to Gojo's infinity, and he is finally able to cut through his inviolable shield. The ultimate tool of destruction can at last reach Gojo, and Mahoraga is now Sukuna's most valuable asset to protect. Gojo is now taking longer to heal with reverse curse technique, and his curse technique output is dropping fast. So now, in this brief moment, everyone is thinking and rushing through their minds that Gojo Satoru can now lose. Even Gojo has a passing thought of losing, yet the thought of defeat gives him an immense feeling of satisfaction. Gojo has finally found someone to satisfy his loneliness as the strongest, a sorcerer that can kill him, and this invigorates Gojo even more. He then charges in on Mahoraga, striking him with a combo of punches and a strong finisher. He chants his curse technique's incantations in order to restore his lost output, revving a reversal red to attack. Quickly, Sukuna recovers from the Black Flash in the shadow, while Rabbit Escape acts as a smokescreen. Sukuna now switches his tactics. Mahoraga is on the offensive now that it's adapted to the Infinity, and Sukuna is on the defense, creating new openings and making sure Mahoraga isn't destroyed. Using the smoke from the fire extinguisher, he tag teams with Mahoraga to attack at the same time, showcasing an ability to use 10 shadows to compress Max Elephant's water, much like a piercing blood. Every time Mahoraga erases the Infinity, Sukuna will also attack. It's clear now that this is a 2v1 in an effort to strip Gojo of his Infinity and kill him. But since Mahoraga has only adapted to Infinity, Sukuna can utilize 10 Shadows more because 10 Shadows and Shrine cannot be used at the same time, unless the curse technique is already applied to a domain. Gojo thinks that this should give him an opportunity to use Reversal Red since Mahoraga will take longer to adapt to it rather than the Lapse Blue that he was using earlier. Just as Gojo collects his thoughts and makes a strategy, Sukuna reveals another hand. This isn't just a 2-on-1, this is a 3-on-1, as Sukuna creates a chimera called Fusion Beast Agito. This Shikigami has the traits of Nue, Great Serpent, Morning Tiger, and Tranquil Deer, a troublesome enemy that can use lightning attacks, regenerate itself, and it can heal Sukuna. At this point, Sukuna goes all in to try and jump and overwhelm Gojo. Yet Gojo is managing himself well, however when firing a red at Mahoraga, it was just barely effective since it was slowly adapting steadily. So to avoid his abilities becoming ineffective, Gojo will have to kill Mahoraga in one shot, and his only option is to use the unlimited hollow technique, Purple. However, Sukuna and the 2 Shikigami leave Gojo no room to fire Purple. Sukuna is on the defensive and the technique takes a while to charge up, but he still has to find a way to use it. Relentlessly, Agito and Mahoraga attack, but to no avail. Gojo performs his second Black Flash and turns his attention to dealing with Agito's regeneration so that it can no longer heal Sukuna. As it turns out, Sukuna strategically hid in the shadows waiting for an opening. He is cautious of Purple and he does not want to give Gojo a chance to fire it off. The only reason he survived the 200% Purple from the start was because it was less than 4 kilometers away. Yet in this condition that he's in, from this distance, even a regular 100% Purple would prove fatal to him. Sukuna needs more. He needs to see more from Mahoraga in order to deal with Gojo swiftly. So he commands Mahoraga to show me what you can do. Mahoraga suddenly made a flying slash just like Sukuna and took Gojo's arm clean off. Sukuna won't let this go to waste. All 3 of them tag in to viciously beat down Gojo while he's injured, but it didn't last long. Gojo noticed Agito's attempt to attack, and the Shikigami is far too weak compared to the rest of them. With a single arm, he amplifies Blue to one-shot Agito, then raises it to the maximum output to crush the Shikigami, using its body as a catalyst, just barely missing Sukuna and Mahoraga as it was fired. Now, in just 41 seconds, the Hollow Technique Purple will once again rip through Shinjuku. The battle intensifies. After landing the initial Black Flash, Gojo Satoru's voltage rises with a rush of exhilaration, and for the first time in 1,000 years, Ryomen Sukuna feels the height of tension. Mahoraga continues to protect its master. Sukuna then takes initiative to rush in, but Gojo counters him and throws him right back into Mahoraga's arms, hurling both Sukuna and Mahoraga through the building. Prior to any curse technique activation, there is always a spark of cursed energy. Gojo continued to chant his incantations for Reversal Red. Sukuna was now on full alert. Based on his initial impressions, he saw this spark as an attempt to use Reversal Red. so he reasons in his mind he'll use Mahoraga to tank the attack and adapt to it. His judgment was by no means incorrect. However, the curse technique Reversal Red was instead fired in the sky. Sukuna knew what this meant. He desperately calls forth Mahoraga's name. Quickly, the Shikigami used the building to reach its targets. Purple is only formed when merging Lapse and Reversal, so then an imaginary mass rushes forth. Ascended in the sky, both the blue Lapse and the Reversal Red were suspended in the air. Mahoraga was ordered to prevent the two from merging as it went first to the blue, as it can completely erase it after having adapted to it. Gojo used the Lapse blue speed in order to pull himself between Mahoraga. Since Mahoraga has adapted to blue, it can no longer be pulled through the air toward its target, ultimately making this adaptation a disadvantage. Sukuna is next. Before the red merges with the blue, Sukuna shoots a piercing blood of water in a last-ditch effort to interrupt the technique, even as Gojo punches him down. Once again, Gojo recites his own incantations, strengthening not the red, but the amplified Lapse blue, swallowing Sukuna's piercing blood. The activation is all but complete, and Gojo finishes his incantation one last time, as we reach his final and greatest esoteric art, the hollow technique ripped through Shinjuku, destroying everything in its wake. Sukuna still emerges from the rubble, battered and beaten. For the first time ever, Gojo blew himself up with a remote detonated purple, but it worked out since he took less damage overall from his own cursed energy. Kusakabe states that Gojo now has the upper hand. Gojo gained his reverse curse technique output from multiple black flashes, and he is ready for battle at the height of his power. Meanwhile, Sukuna's reverse curse technique has slowed down, his output has lowered, and Mahoraga has been destroyed and no longer is a threat. And Sukuna can't do a thing without his own amplification. So now, by all means, Gojo Satoru has won.
Satoru, 久しいね.
Gojo finds himself in a dream, awakened right by his best friend Geto at an airport. Contrary to what he tells his students, in the end, Gojo is not alone, but he's surrounded by his friends. Suguru asked, how was the King of Curses? And Gojo expresses that he was insanely strong, and he wasn't even going all out. Gojo's not even sure he can beat Sukuna even if he didn't have the 10 shadows. It's amazing Gojo himself admits that. Gojo always felt isolated and alone. He points out you can admire a flower and help it bloom, but you can never ask that flower to understand you. There was always going to be a rift between Gojo and others, even if they look up to him. So here comes along Sukuna. Gojo showed him everything. He wanted to convey all of his hard work and his training, his creative thinking and his quick wit, his power. He gave him his all, but it just was not enough for Sukuna. Nonetheless, Gojo was satisfied. He had fun. He feels bad Sukuna was unable to feel the same way and to give it his all. His only regret is that Geto wasn't by his side cheering him on. Gojo's mindset is different than others. He is insanely greedy. Nanami reveals Gojo never cared about protecting anyone or keeping the sorcery world going, but he uses his jujutsu for self-satisfaction. Not that it was good or evil or right or wrong. Gojo chose his own path, and whether or not anyone disagrees, this was a fitting conclusion for him to die by the hand of the strongest. Gojo asked how was Nanami's death. He expresses Haibara helped him out in the end, and it seems like a curse can also be a fuel for life, just like sorcery can. But he points out that there are two paths to go down. If you want to become someone new, go north. If you'd like to return to who you once were, go south. Nanami chose to go south. As someone who dwells on the past, it's ironic that he chose to bet on the future with Yuji. So now Gojo finds himself having to choose. But I think we all know just where Gojo chose to stay. Goodbye, Gojo Satoru. Sukuna reveals that Maharaga's adaptation starts after the initial attack, and eventually it's only a matter of time till the adaptation is complete. However, once a technique is adapted to, the adaptation never stops, and it adapts further and further. What Sukuna sought from Maharaga was a model, a blueprint on how to tear through Gojo's infinity. At first, Maharaga changed the essence of his cursed energy in order to adapt to the limitless, something Sukuna cannot do. So Sukuna waited until Maharaga discovered an adaptation that Sukuna could use for himself. The second adaptation to infinity was exactly what Sukuna needed to see. Instead of sending slashes flying, it expanded the curse technique's target. The target was not just Gojo, but space, the entire world, existence itself. Nothing is immune to his slashes. Gojo's infinity meant nothing if it existed in that space. Everything in its path would simply be torn apart. This world-shattering technique is only possible thanks to Maharaga's blueprint and Sukuna's unbeatable strategy. Thus ends the greatest sorcerer battle in Jujutsu Kaisen, and perhaps one of the most profound character deaths in shonen. It truly was magnificent. Every technique, every punch thrown, every plot twist, all the blood, sweat, and jujutsu. This really is a clash of souls, and a battle between gods that took this JJK community by storm. This fight truly displayed who was the strongest sorcerer of all time. The demon Ryomon Sukuna, the one and only king of curses. However, this was Gojo's fight and his fight alone. He had to face Sukuna to protect the Jujutsu world, but that alone was not the point. He pushed himself further than he's ever been, honed his mind, his body, and his technique to perfection. The price of ultimate strength is the solitude and loneliness that it brings. The one to teach him about love is Sukuna. Sukuna is the only one stronger than Gojo, and now Gojo has someone who can give him a satisfying battle and a conclusion. It was glorious, all that Gojo could ask for. It's bittersweet, however, throughout everything, being the strongest of the modern era and a pillar of the Jujutsu world, he accepts that someone else is stronger, and that makes him happy. Gojo did not die from old age or from sickness or something lame. He died to Sukuna, the strongest sorcerer in history. The loneliness that he holds in his heart is weakness as a human. Gojo cannot call anyone a true equal. However, Sukuna saw him, and as brutal as that may sound, there is no greater show of love than to kill Gojo in righteous combat. So in the end, he passed on without regret. No, in fact, Gojo was the happiest ever. No more pain, no more suffering, no more loneliness in this cursed world. Reunited in his blue spring of youth with Gero, Nanami, Haibara, with everyone who's passed. It's almost too good to be true, and all Gojo can think is that he just prays that this isn't a dream. So, my brothers and sisters, what do you think of the battle between the strongest? Gege Akutami created one of the greatest fights in shonen and a very powerful send-off for one of the most beloved characters. So thank you brothers and sisters for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.